Welcome, everyone. This is the next episode of Authors Bantering. I'm Josh Bresslin. This is Ian M. Rogers. And so this week, it's been kind of fun. I'm going to kind of take a back seat here and let Ian talk for a bit because this is going to be all about in-person author events. I have no real experience doing this. Ian has plenty, so I'll be taking probably as many notes as those that are watching this video here. So I guess, Ian, take it away.
Yeah, so this is something that I think the idea of appearing in person locally at a bookshop, a library, an author's event, anything that's writing related, an open mic or anything like that, I think is a really, really good way to get yourself out there as a writer locally. And I say that because there's a lot of, talk, YouTube, blog posts, advice, whatever, that's about getting yourself out there online on a national scale. Like we're obviously on YouTube right now, anybody can access that. So a lot of people, overlook or don't think about the opportunities that would be there in the real world, in their town, in their city, within a short drive. And the idea that there are places that want to have local authors and want to meet you and want to hear what you have to say. And then two, that can be a really good way to engage with people in the real world. And
Yep.
I've done a handful of these. I've been really happy with all of them, the way all of them went, even the really small ones. I went to my local bookstore. I have a good relationship with them. I did launch parties there for my novel and then my first chapbook.
Oh, yeah.
And people came, and these events were really good for a number of reasons. One, they gave me a chance to talk about the book and for people to come and to get excited about the book and hear more about it, which was just fun for them, and I think people really liked it. But two, they helped me build a rapport with the local bookstore, and they were really, really happy when I held this event and people actually came and spent money both on my book and then on other kinds of things,
Yep.
that they happened to buy when they were there. And so it was really win-win for both of us. And so, this got me off on the right foot with just starting a really, really good relationship with them. And then other events as well. I did an event at my town library a few
Oh,
weeks ago, and they
okay.
were really happy to meet me. And I met some other authors and artists there, and it was good to talk shop with them and network with them a little bit. So it was a good way to meet people in that way. But again, the audience also had a good time, and they enjoyed listening to me as a writer. They enjoyed listening to other, writers and artists talk about their work and so on. And I think people like these kind of events when they're engaging and when they're interesting and when
Yeah.
people are telling real stories and just saying, for lack of a better term, I mean, smart, intelligent material. And I guess, what does that look like? And I think a lot of writers wonder, like, oh, if I did an event, what would I talk about? I'd read from my book, of course, but then, what else would I talk about beyond that? And one thing that's been really helpful for me is just telling different kinds of stories or talking about different aspects of my life, things that I've done or my writing process. At this, library event I did a few weeks ago, I talked about my path to becoming a writer, which was, figuring and stumbling through these steps after college and going to Japan and going to grad school and sort of using those steps to build a writing career. Or as steps to a writing career. And that was a story that was very easy for me to tell and that I was able to, make interesting for people. And so one thing that, if you're a writer watching this who is, thinking about what an event might look like, think about what stories can you tell? Are there stories behind your book, behind the creation of it, behind the subject matter? Maybe this is very easy for nonfiction authors because they can come in and essentially talk about their topic.
Yep.
For literary or realistic fiction authors, it can be in between. It can be a special challenge for speculative fiction authors where, with sci-fi or fantasy, there's not a lot of real life parallels. But I still think there's plenty of things you can talk about. You can talk about your genre, you can talk about your writing, you can talk about your publication. You can talk about writing tips. You can talk about, your world and make that presentable and interesting to people, especially, if there's visuals. People really like visuals at these types of events, I think. And just some way that you can turn your story from a reading experience into an in-person event experience. And I think just to kind of sum up this kind of introduction, ask yourself as a writer, what story do I have to tell in front of a crowd of people that would be interesting for them to hear about beyond just reading a couple of pages is
Bingo.
a really good way to start.
And I think there's something to be said for doing in-person events. We're talking about doing local things. I think people might dismiss this because they're thinking like, okay, I do a local author event, right, and maybe I get like 20 people to show up. All right, what's that? As opposed to trying to reach a global audience online here with putting all their effort into that. But I think what people tend to misunderstand is your local base is pretty much like you as a writer, like where your power is. Like if you can get locals to come to your thing and watch you, right? You always have that base. You always have that. And that's where we talked not too long ago in the prior video about, hey, if you're going to be an author and you're going to be professional about this, you need to look for work in jobs, writing jobs. If you establish yourself basically as a local author who's done events, who's done, basically these readings, you're putting yourself in the community as an authority on the field of writing. That's where, hey, listen, my son likes to write a book. Can you help coach him, right? Comes in. I wrote a book. Hey, can you help edit my book for me, right? Your local work that stems from that and the connections that you can make and the network you can get from having such a nice, solid local establishment of you as the authority in the writing field. The advantage of that is awesome. And you're going to stand out more. I mean, trying to stand out online is very, very difficult too. You got billions of people that are online here. Standing out amongst that crowd is almost near impossible. Locally, it's not so hard. And if you can do a good author event in person, that's excellent. And I think psychologically too, I don't know, you can say it's busy, but I think there's also a nice psychological factor of like, wow, these people really came to see me. All right, maybe I'm actually pretty good, like maybe I'm onto something here. I mean,
I'm really glad you touched on that because I hadn't even thought of that aspect. I mean, if you put stuff online and it gets likes and comments, that's good. But when you come to an in-person event and you can see people being engaged and they applaud or they laugh or they come up and talk to you afterwards and it creates these real interactions, these are huge confidence boosts. Huge, 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 huge. And again, for me as an author, that's really important for my confidence, but it's also, part of the work that I would like to be doing as an author is interacting with people in that way, other than just, likes and comments online. I like also that you mentioned the numbers and the idea that, if you put stuff online, you could potentially reach, however many thousands or millions of people versus a local event where the numbers are going to be smaller. 20 people is nothing to scoff at. 10, 5, or even 2 people is nothing to scoff at, especially if your event is good. And for example, if you have an event and 2 people come, that's small numbers, but if they really, really like your event, they're going to be in. I mean, they're going to be very dedicated. They're going to, potentially tell their friends about this event. Oh, I saw this cool writer last Friday, and he talked about this and this, and, his book was here, and so on and so on. Or the idea that they see you in person, they're going to remember that. So that when they see your next book in the bookstore in 2 years, they're going to be like, oh, I remember that guy from that event 2 years ago. They're going to buy that book. And it creates a stronger interaction than just, something posted online could potentially have.
Exactly. Plus, if you're doing it local, right? Like, if you don't do a local event, how are you going to rub it in the faces of those around your area that never believed in you, right? I'm joking a little bit.
Well,
but
of course, there's that. Of course, you talk
I'm just
about
saying,
bragging rights and things like that.
Yeah.
It's a really good way, when people you went to high school with, or your friends' parents, or just strangers, they see your event being advertised somewhere. When they see a poster for it, when they talk to somebody who was there, it's like, whoa, this guy's really serious. And it is really, really good for your credibility. And especially for maybe people who, online is, they see it as being just online or not real or not really, establishing yourself in some way. This can be a really, really good way to build credibility with people like that, especially for previous generations, I think. Older people, I think this works really well where it can be a huge, huge credibility boost for those in-person events.
Absolutely. Very good. And so as far as like playing these things out, just like, are you typically just like calling these people, like, hey, calling the library up, calling up the bookstore there and doing it in person to set it up?
That's a really good question, is how do, authors set up in-person events?
Mm-hmm.
For me, again, I was able to, as a local author, to email my local bookstore. I did email, I did not call. Email my local bookstore and ask them about stocking my book. My first event that I did with them, they actually suggested, I believe, her response in the email was something like, "Oh, we can do an event at the store if you like," and I latched onto this opportunity.
Yep.
It showed that they were willing. I did not pitch that in my initial email, which was just about them potentially selling the book.
Hmm.
But I know with other bookstores, other venues, they do want you to pitch them. Especially if you maybe know somebody who's associated with that bookstore, it can be a really, really good
Okay.
way. Or again, if you're local. In the case of the library, they were actually looking to hold an event of this kind, and it put out kind of a call for people who might be interested. I latched onto that when I saw that right away, and actually helped plan this event. Which, granted, I had to do a lot of heavy lifting as far as designing advertisements and making phone calls and emails and things like that to get this together. But it was worth it. We had a great time, and I sold some books, and I met a lot of people there. So, I think especially if an author is willing to do the heavy lifting themselves and put the work in to make the event a success, whether that's through coordinating or even something like setting up tables and chairs, which, for in-person events, there's a lot of setting up of chairs and logistics that has to come in. If you're right there who's willing to, come in 2 hours early and do that and talk to people and really, really be engaged instead of expecting the bookstore or the venue to do it, they're really going to like you a lot more. They're going to
Yep.
see that you're in it all the way. They're going to see that you're willing to help out, and they're going to want to work with you more. Can be really, really important. So I just to sum up, I think, contacting places and asking, a lot of authors have a lot of mileage with that. And then being open for potential opportunities can be really important. And then also there's a networking aspect there where, if you know writers, editors, bookstore owners, people who are potentially involved with this, if they're looking to have something, they might call you up, they might email you. If you bump into them, they might mention it. Keep an eye out for those kinds of things, those kinds of opportunities, and just try and snap them up when you can.
Perfect. All right, man. All right, so what we'll do is we'll wrap this up here. I actually took some notes as we were talking. This has been actually helpful for myself. I might start doing this. Book come out later this year. So with that, if you all have seen this and enjoyed it, as always, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. This is Josh Bresslin. That's Ian M. Rogers, and we will see you all next week.
Take it easy.